Welcome to Health Matters. My name is Sherry Gallant. I'm with Alberta Health Services. And in our first segment today, we're speaking with Krista Milford. She's from the University of Alberta. Krista is a research project coordinator at the School of Public Health, University of Alberta in Edmonton. She coordinates the Benchmarking Food Environment Project, which is co-led by Drs. Kim Rain, Candace Nikiforuk, Katerina Maximova, and Dana Olstad. With 5 years of funding from Alberta Innovates, the project annually produces Alberta's Nutrition Report Card, an assessment of current food environments and nutrition policies in Alberta through 2021. Krista also works with communities to create their own mini nutrition report cards for local food environments. Welcome, Krista.
Thanks so much.
Let's start off with a bit of background regarding the history of the Alberta Nutrition Report Card on food environments for children and youth. That's a mouthful. When and why this work was undertaken by yourself and the School of Public Health at the University of Alberta. And just to make it a little bit longer, what are some of the indicators that the report is focusing on in regards to healthy food access for children and youth?
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, I can definitely give a bit of a background. It really started with the question of how do we address obesity? We know that there's a 26% rate of obesity and overweight in children and youth in Alberta. And so the team wanted to address that. They also knew that there's a gap. There's a participation physical activity report card, but there's nothing on nutrition. And so they decided to kind of look at what do Alberta food environments for kids look like. We know that food environments influence their choices of what they eat, and we know that the patterns they establish in childhood carry into adulthood, and obesity-related chronic diseases in children are becoming more prominent. And so how do we address this? And so really it just took kind of asking the question and looking at the literature. They examined the literature, as researchers do, to find out what are the indicators, what kind of things should we be looking for in each of these environments that could act as a facilitator or a barrier to healthy eating. And they asked an expert group of about 20 across Canada and for their feedback on this, and created the Alberta Nutrition Report Card based on that. So it's based on 5 environments and 37 indicators.
That's pretty scientific. Can you sort of expand a little bit on what food environments are and how they influence children's eating habits?
Sure. It's based on 5. So there's the physical environment, the communication environment, the social environment, economic environment, and the political environment. So I'll just touch briefly on each of those. The physical environment is what is available to children through restaurants, grocery stores, in vending machines, that type of thing. The communication environment is what is the food marketing messages that they're receiving that could influence what they eat, and that could be at point of purchase at restaurants. It could be even nutrition education they're receiving in school. The social environment is looking at what is the attitudes, beliefs, and values around nutrition in communities. And the economic environment is anything that's really related to the cost of food, whether it be how it's manufactured, retailing, even health promotion interventions that would lower costs for healthy eating. That can all affect choice. And then those are encapsulated by the political environment that provides the infrastructure, the policies to support programming and to support those things.
So what are some of your most recent findings?
Well, this year it's a C again at the provincial level. So we know that there's definitely room for improvement towards an A.
So C is the last couple of years then?
It is, yes. Yeah, we've been at a C now consistently. So, and there are things that change each year, but it does average out still to a C. Where
should all of the stakeholders, for lack of a better word, focus most? Which food environment should they put most of their focus on in order to try to bring that grade up?
That's an awesome question, yeah, and I think a lot of people want to know that. And one of the things we say is that really it's not any individual intervention or program. It's looking across those environments and what are the key levers in each of those environments to support healthy eating, because it's really the combination of a bunch of those that's really going to make a change. And that's why we have the 5, and we kind of focus that way. We also have our infographic too that kind of shows that description of the different environments.
And we can find that online?
Yes, yes. If you go to Alberta Policy Coalition website, we have all of our nutrition report cards there since 2015. So we've now produced 5.
Okay, so what do you think has the greatest influence on youth? Home or social environments and advertising and social media?
Definitely both. And we don't really talk about, or put parents at fault for what's being offered at home. We're looking at how are the food environments that are in the community, whether it be at the rec facilities, in the schools, what are those foods offered and how are those healthy? Because that's kind of the choices that they'll make in those settings. Definitely parents can encourage eating healthy foods at home too, but there's no policies that we can really implement on them to do those things. So
yeah. So today you were in Lethbridge to talk about Lethbridge's mini nutrition report card. What can you tell us about that?
Yes, Lethbridge, we've been working with a great group headed by registered dietitian Heather Mather, and she's gathered a bunch of stakeholders to come around and look at rec facilities in Lethbridge and what kind of foods are being offered here in Lethbridge. So one of the great things is we're finding there's a lot of rec facilities and places for people to be physically active. There's also great access to water fountains, but when we look at what the food is that's being offered, we're looking at it going, oh no, it's mainly choose least often foods. So that's pop and chips and hamburgers and fries and things like that. So what we really would like to see is moving away from that type of food to offer fruits and vegetables and fresh foods more often.
Okay, anything you'd like to add?
I guess just, if for more information, just go to our website. And we definitely work with communities across Alberta, working with 14. So you can always contact us through that website at the Alberta Policy Coalition.
Thank you so much. Welcome back. Now we're with Korey Fung. Korey is a student dietitian with Nutrition Services, and he's going to talk with us about sports nutrition, specifically fueling our young athletes. Korey, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
It's nice to have you with us. We'll start off by asking, proper nutrition can be tricky when you're trying to marry it with a training schedule. So what kinds of foods and drinks should athletes be looking at having before a game?
So for athletes who take the time to plan out their healthy eating and hydration schedules, they get the benefit of getting the most out of their practice, performing their best mentally and physically on the field, some speedy recovery, and also they're less prone to injury and illnesses. So if you're looking for pre-sport nutrition, the thing to focus on is carbohydrates. Things with carbohydrates is they digest quickly so that fuel is readily available for when you step onto the field. Ideally, you're looking at having a pre-game meal with carbohydrates about 2 to 3 hours before you step onto the field. Now, the thing to do with meals is you want to make them balanced. So with your carbohydrates, you want to have a little bit of fruit and vegetables along with a little bit of protein. So some examples would be about 2 slices of toast with 2 tablespoons of peanut butter, 1 fruit, and 1 glass of 1% milk. Or you can have something like a chicken sandwich with 1 ounce of low-fat cheese and half a cup of unsweetened applesauce.
Okay.
So that leads into my next point. If you don't have 2 to 3 hours before your next game, and maybe you only have an hour and a half, you can still have a small snack. So that might look like something like a granola bar, 3/4 of a cup of low-fat yogurt, as well as a piece of fruit. Or something like a full bowl of oatmeal with cinnamon and apples, and then another glass of 1% milk.
Okay, and you mentioned right off the top hydration and how important that is. What is the optimum amount of water that an athlete should be drinking?
So like carbohydrate foods, you should be drinking water before and during and after activity as well, actually. So 2 to 3 hours before, we recommend 1.5 cups of water to 2.5 cups, anywhere in between that. And then during activity, you need to stay hydrated as well. So every 15 minutes to 20 minutes of activity, you're going to need anywhere between half a cup or 1.25 cups of water. And then after activity, it's important to rehydrate. So you're going to be looking for 1 to 2 cups of water to rehydrate after activity.
Okay. And hydration during activity is, do I understand it correctly, that it's not just to replace what you're perspiring, but also that you need that hydration for every function that your body is performing during that time that you're playing?
You are absolutely correct. Yes, water plays an important function in so many different parts of the body. And the big thing to recognize is if you become dehydrated on the field during activity, there's actually no effective way to rehydrate yourself during the span of the game.
Oh, you're behind already.
Yes, so that's why it's super important to hydrate before the game.
Okay. Okay. And what about sports drinks?
So they're definitely a popular item among a lot of people, but the thing to recognize is there's a time and place for sports drinks. So if you are an athlete engaging in intense, vigorous physical activity for more than 60 minutes, then you can start looking at a sports drink.
Okay.
Yes. So the sports drink then can definitely help you replenish sugars that have been used up by your muscles and your brains, as well as any electrolytes that you might have lost through sweat. But if you're not engaging in intense physical activity for more than 60 minutes, the number one recommendation is water.
Okay. That seems to be the mantra for everything these days, is choose water over just about anything.
Well, yeah.
Okay. And what about protein supplements? I see a lot of young athletes using protein powders and supplements, people in general, actually. So are they necessary?
No, in fact. Yeah. So contrary to popular belief, everyone can get an adequate amount of protein in their everyday diet. And this goes for vegetarians as well, because a lot of people think that people who are following a vegetarian or plant-based diets aren't receiving enough protein. Mm-hmm. So as long as your diet includes quality protein selections, such as lean meats, fish, eggs, soy products, or things like beans and lentils, you're probably guaranteed to be meeting your protein requirements for the day.
Okay, cool. Where can coaches and parents go to for more information?
So if you go onto the Healthy Eating Starts Here website through Alberta Health Services, we have a wonderful resource there called Sports Nutrition, a handbook for coaches. And that covers actually a lot of the topics that we've discussed today and includes a whole bunch of other things as well. So if you're interested in talking to your athletes about things like alcohol as it relates to sports, or talking about body image with your athletes as well, you can find all those resources there.
That's tremendous. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Stay with us. Welcome back. I'm here now with Lauren Tarr. Lauren is a student dietitian with Nutrition Services, and she's going to talk about something that we hear a lot about these days, and that's plant-based protein choices. Thank you for coming, Lauren.
Thank you for having me.
Many of us may not think of plants as something that can be high in protein. So define for us what plant-based protein means.
Yeah, so a lot of the times we only think of animal sources as being high in protein, but there's actually a lot of excellent protein choices that come from plants. So beans, peas, lentils, legumes, pulses, nuts, nut butters like almond butter, peanut butter, seeds, soy products like tofu, and soy beverages are all excellent sources of plant-based proteins.
That is a lot. That's a lot of choices. And so if you're choosing plant-based protein, what are the advantages of that over different types of protein?
So a variety of protein foods can all make up a healthy eating pattern, but the new food guide is recommending that Canadians choose more plant-based proteins more often. Some of the benefits are improved heart health because they're higher in fiber and lower in the unhealthy or saturated fats compared to protein foods that come from animals.
Okay, and that's another point too, is that vegetables do have fats in them. Okay, and so you mentioned Canada's food guide. Does that mean that they're suggesting people should follow vegan or vegetarian diets?
So we're definitely still stick with the everything in moderation recommendation, and there's clear benefits to eating more plant-based proteins, some of which I just mentioned, but foods like eggs, fish, lean red meats, and poultry can all still be components of a healthy eating pattern. There are some pretty simple ways that you can incorporate these plant-based proteins into your regular meals and even work your way up to doing a couple completely meatless meals per week. Some of these ideas would be swapping processed meats like deli meats for nut butters on a sandwich, replacing half or all of the ground meat in pasta dishes, stews, soups, and tacos with lentils or a pre-cooked soy-based crumble like a veggie ground round. You can try blending soft or silken tofu into soups and smoothies to give it that creamy texture, and you can also add nuts and seeds to salads and roasted vegetable dishes.
That sounds delicious, actually. So if I'm one of those people who's trying to incorporate more vegetable-based protein, and I'm doing that more and more, how do I make sure that I'm getting enough protein?
Yeah, that's a good question and a common question. You actually don't need as much protein as you might think you do. So we tell people to aim for a quarter of your plate to be protein foods at each meal. And when you compare the amount of protein in plant-based sources with the more traditional animal sources, there's actually a lot of similarities. So 2 eggs, for example, contain 12 grams of protein, but so does 3/4 of a cup of chickpeas and lentils. A 3-ounce portion of chicken or ground beef contains 23 grams of protein, which is pretty comparable to 3/4 of a cup of tofu that contains 26 grams. So we see a lot of similarities there. Where we see some differences is when you look at the plant-based beverages, which can vary a bit in protein content. So you want to be paying attention to protein, calcium, and vitamin D, especially if you're giving them to children or seniors, because they can lack some of those nutrients that is usually provided by cow's milk. So this is just an example of a soy-based beverage. So when you're looking at these plant-based beverages, you want to look that they say that they're fortified or enriched on the front. And they'll usually say on the front that they're a good source of protein, which means that they have greater than 6 grams of protein in them.
Per serving.
Per 1 cup, yeah. And then less than 10 grams of sugar per serving, and greater than 30% daily value of calcium and vitamin D.
And how does that compare to regular milk?
That's why we say to look for these fortified and enriched ones, because that means that they're having to meet the nutrition requirements so that they are comparable to a cow's milk.
So when we talk about plant-based beverages, I'm wondering, is it okay for parents to offer this type of beverage to children, young children, instead of cow's milk when they're still small and growing?
Yes, so we don't recommend it for children under 2 just because they can be lacking in that protein, calcium, vitamin D, and the fat is especially important for brain development. So under 2, we recommend breast milk or an iron-fortified formula. After age 2, you can start to consider these plant-based beverages, but once again, you want to look and make sure that they're fortified or enriched and have the appropriate protein, calcium, and vitamin D, and then you want to make sure that they're getting fat sources from other sources like avocados, margarine, that kind of thing.
All those good healthy fats.
Yeah.
And if if we've grabbed their attention and they're looking for some more information, where can they go?
So Canada's New Food Guide is a really great resource, and a lot of it has moved to being online and has enhanced information online, which is really great for consumers. So that's just canadafoodguide.org, and they have more information about what I was talking about today, as well as recipes like a tofu and vegetable stir fry or crispy chickpeas, which are great for a snack in your lunch and stuff. Also, Alberta Health Services has the healthyeatingstartshere.ca website, which has more information and more recipes like a lentil and pasta salad and a black bean casserole.
That sounds good too. Thank you for all this great information. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
And thank you for being with us too. For more great health tips and nutrition tips, visit ahs.ca or healthyeatingstartshere.ca. Thanks to all my guests today for a great show about nutrition and food. And we look forward to seeing you next time.